This is Brad Zinn. He's with Verify the Vote. He's been doing this and other similar things for the last several decades, right? He's very interested in helping make sure we avoid voter fraud, and he's going to tell us some key things that we can do right now, and especially at the general election. And this information he's going to share tonight, some information is on a website he'll show you on. He has some DVDs over here I'm sure I'll talk a little bit about, and some cards with links to his website. We wanted to get this information to as many of our neighbors as we can and make sure each of our election polling places are staffed fully with people that are aware of what's happening so they can be prepared to avoid any kind of voter fraud. So Brad's in. We'll go until we're done, I guess.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Time for me to say thank you for being here tonight. How many of you know who I am? How many of you do not know who I am? How many of you do not care who I am? All right. Well, first of all, I want to say that I never take for granted the opportunity to speak in front of a group. Just to give you a little background, I started with the Christian Anti-Communism Crusade in 1966, so this is not my first rodeo. I've been studying vote fraud since 1992, and I became active again in 2008 when I saw Barack Obama come across the horizon, and I knew we were in for a bumpy ride. So I have, for the last 4 years, devoted myself to teaching the history and ideology of Marxism and also alerting people to the dangers of vote fraud. And I never take for granted the opportunity to speak in front of a group, so thank you for sharing your time with me here tonight. Now, I have a PowerPoint presentation. I'm going to try to get through this as fast as I can. We had a jam-packed evening tonight, but it's called, and this should really say how the rest of the Constitution will be shredded. The Electoral College overturned and vote fraud may determine the next President of the United States. And I'll try to tie all this all together for you. How many of you have never been a PC before this year? Okay, good. You're the most important, you know, I mean, PCs are I'm a PC in LD20, by the way, just so you know. PCs in the Republican Party are exceedingly important because this is a ground-up, bottom-up party. You elect the county legislative district leaders who elect the county leaders who elect the state and national leaders. All right, let's go to the map. How many of you here tonight would like to help Barack Obama win a second term? Anybody? Okay, I just want to make sure we're all on the same page because I'm going to get partisan. All right. This is an Electoral College map. If you like to write down, there are a couple of notes that are not on your papers. This comes from freedomslighthouse.net, freedomslighthouse.net. I've been following this for about 2 years. Okay? Now what they do is they take current polling data, they match it together with historical voting patterns, and they project what they think the Electoral College map is going to look like. This map is from March of this year, and that was back during the primary presidential preference election season. Now, they did not know who the candidate was going to be at this time, so it was a generic GOP candidate. You'll see all of the red states there are pretty solid Republican, and that covers a lot of territory, doesn't it? That's a lot of physical, geographical territory. So you take all these numbers in each of these states and you add them all up, and the likely GOP candidate starts out with 191 votes in the Electoral College. And then the blue states, which is the upper northeast, which Barry Goldwater once said we'd be better off to saw it off into the Atlantic Ocean and start over again. The Great Lakes region, or the Rust Belt area, and then what I like to call the wacky left coast over here, and New Mexico. And that gives Obama, in March of this year, a starting point of 217 likely votes. Now, I'm going to stand in front of this so nobody can cheat right now, and let me ask you a very important question. How many votes does it take to win the Electoral College? 270. 270. Give yourselves a gold star. I talked to a lot of groups, and they say 1,124. So if you know 270, you're a step ahead of the rest of the class. Now, let's talk about how do we get to 270, okay? Every state is divided into congressional districts. After the last redistricting here in Arizona, we ended up with how many congressional districts? 9, thank you. And every state has how many senators? 2. Okay, so 9 plus 2 is 11. That means Texas has 36 congressional districts and 2 senators. California, 53 districts and 2 senators. Florida, 27 districts and 2 senators. So every state is determined this way, and you add all of those up. Now, how many representatives do we have in the House of Representatives?
535.
Now, House of Representatives.
235.
235. 435. Okay, 435 representatives in the House of Representatives. How many senators do we have? 100. Everybody knows that. All right. So you take 435 representatives, that's because of the congressional districts, add 100, that's 535, and then you go over here to Washington, D.C., and they get 3 Electoral College votes, that's 538. Divide by 2, that's 269, add 1 for the win, that's 270, that's how we get to that number. Everybody clear? Yeah. Okay, now let me tell you why the Democrats want Puerto Rico to become a state. It has nothing to do with the benefit of the people of Puerto Rico. That's 3 more Electoral College votes, which are likely Democrat, and another Senate, or 2 more senators and another representative in the House. It's all about power. Okay, so this is where we're at. Starting in March of this year, 191 for the likely GOP candidate, 217 for Obama. Let's go to June of this year. It was updated, and we look here and we see, oh, the green states are the battleground states, the undecided states. Now we have Romney having picked up one of the states here, North Carolina, 15 votes, which put him temporarily at 206, Obama at 221, and the toss-up states at 111. And at 221 votes, that puts, let's see, 70, 29? 49, I'm sorry, 49 votes away from a second term. Florida's 29, and another like in Ohio, and anything else, Wisconsin gives him a second term. All right, this is the latest one. This is August 21st, August 21st. This is the latest polling, and it was right around the time of the GOP convention, and we have Romney, we have Romney still at 191. North Carolina went back in the battleground state. Obama at 243. If that doesn't send a cold chill up your spine, I give up, I'll go home now. All right? And the toss-up state's on 104. Okay, now, how are the Democrats going to put this strategy together to get him over 270? All right, Jim Messina, who is the architect of this campaign, or one of the spokesmen of the campaign, it's David Axelrod, David Plouffe, and Jim Messina is the spokesman. Jim Messina did a YouTube video. This chart was on it. It's been published on the internet. It's not hard to find. You can go home and look it up for yourself. They have 5 strategies to get Obama to 270. We start with the baseline states. Baseline states. These are the states that John Kerry carried in 2004 versus George W. Bush. You'll see that it's the upper northeast, the Great Lakes region, and the wacky left coast. That is 246 Electoral College votes, putting him, 24 votes away from a second term. Now, why do we start with the John Kerry states? Somebody asked me one time, well, why don't you start with the 2008 states? 2008 was an anomaly. That was a change election. People voted in ways that are not historic. Normally, red states went blue in 2008. So it would be ultimately stupid for Obama to start with where he started in 2008 as his base. It would be like Romney saying, okay, we're going to start with the states that Reagan carried in 1984. Does anybody remember how many states Reagan carried in 84? 49. So that would be like Romney saying, okay, well, we're going to start there, okay? And then I'm going to concentrate everything I've got on Minnesota. Okay, so you start with the John Kerry states. Those are solidly Democrat states. Typically vote Democrat. That's 246 votes. So now how do we get to 270? They have 5 strategies. The first is the Western path: Colorado, New Mexico, Nevada, and Iowa. New Mexico has already been called pretty heavily in favor of Obama by all the polling data that we have currently. So that's 5 votes. Now, What happened in Colorado 4 years ago? What happened in Colorado 4 years ago? Democrat National Convention, the big columns in the Denver Stadium, and they anointed the Messiah, didn't they? And they used something called the blueprint to flip Colorado from red to blue in 2 election cycles. Okay? This is a battleground state. Nevada, let me ask you a question. Does anybody think there might be a problem with vote fraud in Nevada?
Can you say Harry Reid?
Can we say Harry Reid? Thank you. Sharon Angle was leading in the polling. The electronic voting machines, when you pushed Sharon Angle, came up Harry Reid. The people said, hey, could you come over and take a look at this, please, because it's not registering my vote correctly. And who came over to service the machine? No, SEIU, Service Employees International Union, a Marxist union that supports Harry Reid. If you don't believe me, go home and do your homework. Okay, now, so that's Nevada. Now we look at Iowa. Current polling is it's a dead heat between Romney and Obama in Iowa. So if they can put together Colorado, New Mexico, Nevada, and Iowa, that's 272 votes. That's a second term. Florida path, if you start with the John Kerry states and you add the 29 votes, he only needs 24, you add 29 in Florida, that's 275 second term. Anybody think there might be a possibility of vote fraud in Florida? Yeah. Hanging chads, pregnant chads, you remember this? Okay. Right now, according to the National Voting Rights Act, every state is required to purge their rolls of dead voters and felons. Governor Rick Scott of Florida started to do that. The DOJ came in and sued him to stop. Thankfully, Governor Scott has a backbone and told the feds to go pound sand, and they're continuing their purging of the voter rolls. So all hail Governor Scott for having the cojones. All right, the next path, oops, sorry, I keep hitting the wrong button. The next path is the southern path, the John Kerry states, once again, with North Carolina and Virginia. Let me ask you a question. And believe me, I've been giving this lecture for almost a year now. You're going to know the answer to this. What happened in North Carolina? The Democrat National Convention. Now this is typically a right, well, North Carolina is a right-to-work non-union state. And it upset the unions no end that the Democrats picked a non-union state to hold their convention. But the Democrats went after the NASCAR crowd. For $5 you could have your name painted on a NASCAR car. They were going to have a big NASCAR event. If you remember, Michelle Obama was booed at a NASCAR event sometime earlier. So I thought they had some real guts to go after the NASCAR crowd. But nonetheless, they ran short of money. Last count was $15 million. And so they had to cancel the NASCAR event. Let me ask you a question. Who lives in Virginia? Government employees. Thank you very much. And what has been the only growth industry in the last 3.5 years?
Government.
Government employees. And how many make over $100,000 a year? It's been more than triple. And the public sector employees make more than the private sector. So if you've got 16% of the employed population working for the federal government, now each one of those has a significant other or spouse whose livelihood also depends on that government job. You've now just created it's 16 to 20% government employees. That equates to 32 to 40% of the voting population in Virginia depends on the status quo to save their jobs and their 100,000 a year plus jobs. Virginia is a battleground state. All right, so, but if you add those two states together, Virginia and North Carolina, which Obama carried in 2008, that's 274, second term. Okay, Midwest path. The John Kerry states plus Ohio and Iowa. Ohio is 18 Electoral College votes. Iowa is 6. That puts him over the top right at 270. That's a win. Close enough for Hollywood. Let me ask you a question. Apart from the basketball court and the golf course, where has Barack Obama spent more time since he became president than anywhere else? Ohio. Ohio is the battleground state. Here is an article from November of last year. November of last year, that's almost close to a year ago, 10 months ago. Obama, as of November of last year, surpassed the number of swing state visits by a president that the record was set by George W. Bush. Where did Obama kick off his re-election campaign for this year? Ohio. What was his second stop? After he left Ohio, where did he go? Virginia. Virginia. So this ought to tell you what the strategy is and how important these states are. No Republican has ever won the presidency of the United States without winning what state? Ohio. Thank you. All right. So that is one of their strategies. And the final strategy is right over here. The expansion path is Nevada, Colorado, New Mexico, Iowa, and looky, Arizona. Now, why do they think Arizona is in play? Why do they think Arizona is in play? Anybody? No, that's part of it, but that's not all of it. The big thing is, well, it's a Senate bill.
1070.
Thank you. SB 1070. The Supreme Court had a ruling. It didn't matter whether the SB 1070 was upheld or overturned. It didn't matter because it was going to inflame the Latino community one way or the other, and they were going to take advantage of that. Here is an article from Time Magazine, February 6th of this year. Now, this is an unfair question. I'll answer it for you, but do you know how many votes John McCain carried Arizona by in 2008? 198,000 votes. We have a voting population here of a little over 3 million. 198,000 ain't a lot of votes. So if they believe that they can register, according to this article, and there are boots on the ground right now that have been bussed in from California that are canvassing neighborhoods all over Maricopa and Pima County to register new Latino voters. According to this article, they believe they can register 150,000 new Latino voters. And if they can, combined with SB 1070 and redistricting, they believe they can put Arizona in play. Now, it's a long shot, but it is a possibility. Now, there are three websites that I follow on the Electoral College. This is freedomslighthouse.net is just one of them. Let me give you two others. And if you want to make a note of this, please go home and do your homework, because if you want to win this election, you've got to understand the process and how this works. The other one is called 270 to win, 270, the number, digit 270, 2TOWin.com, 270 to win. The other one, if you want to write it down now, is realclearpolitics.com, realclearpolitics.com. Now, Real Clear Politics, what they do is they take, you know all these polls, like the Rasmussen and the ABC poll and the Fox News poll and the CBS poll and the New York Times poll. Well, Real Clear Politics takes all of those polls and they average them out so that the bias kind of shrinks a little bit, and they take the average of all these polls and then they post their results. According to Real Clear Politics, Arizona is right now leaning Romney. It is not solid, according to realclearpolitics.com. It's leaning Romney. 270 to win does something very, very interesting. They tabulate up that right now, and this is as of, well, this was June 21st. Oh, I had a more recent one than this, and I'm sorry. But let me just give you from June. You can look it up on 270 for the current one. I didn't grab the article on the way out the door, and I apologize. The Democrats are at 217 in the Electoral College, Republicans at 191, which is where it has been for almost 2 years. 191 for the Republican candidate. 270 to win then takes the mathematical formulas needed to get to 270, and they calculate how many winning combinations there are for the Democrats and how many winning combinations there are for the Republicans. And it is bigger than this now, but let me just explain to you that in June, the Democrats had 85 different winning combinations, 85 ways to get from 217 to 270. The Republican candidate had from 191 to 270 only 72 ways to get to 270. And if the election were held in June, they calculated the odds were the Democrats would win by 90%. The Republicans had a 9% chance of winning, and there was a 1% chance of a tie in the Electoral College. Now, the current information is at 270towin.com. You can look it up tonight when you go home. All right, so if this doesn't scare you, I don't know what will. Yes, ma'am.
Could you repeat that first website that you got that from?
Oh, freedomslighthouse.net, freedomslighthouse.net. Now, that's the bad news. The good news is this. There's a huge enthusiasm gap. I don't want to leave you, just bleak and depressed. There's a huge enthusiasm gap that is also being measured. And every demographic group that Obama carried in 2008 is now deflated by some degree or another. The black vote is still pretty solid to Obama. The Hispanic vote, however, has decreased. The Jewish vote, the women's vote, and on and on and on. There are various demographics. All of them have decreased in their enthusiasm for Obama. On the other hand, the Republican enthusiasm is like off the charts. So that is what is going to ultimately carry the day. It is voter turnout and the prevention of vote fraud, and that's why I'm here. Okay, so let's take a little trip through the Electoral College. I know we talked a lot about the Constitution. There's courses coming up here. Let me ask you a question. Who created the federal government?
States.
Well, I know, I know where some people are sitting. Okay, the banks. All right. What was the other answer?
The states.
States, thank you very much. The states created the federal government. There were 13 sovereign states at the founding of this country. They got together and they said, you know what, we need something that represents all of our interests together. So they came up with a little thing called the Articles of Confederation. After a while, they found out it wasn't quite working the way they wanted it to. So they said, we need to revisit this, strengthen the Articles of Confederation. We're going to call a convention in Philadelphia and take a look at all that. They got together in Philadelphia. They said, lo and behold, we're going to throw that whole thing out and start over again with a clean sheet of paper. And as a result, they came up with the Constitution of the United States. Now, they got through the process and they got right down to the nitty-gritty, and they could not get past a bump in the road, an impasse. There was something in the Constitution, the way they originally drafted it, that they could not get the states to agree on, and it created a roadblock, and they could not get it ratified. Anybody know what that roadblock was?
Slavery.
No, not slavery.
States being directly represented.
Thank you very much. You're on it, sir. And what it means is
directly, not just
right. But specifically what it was they created the three branches of government: executive, judicial, and legislative. But on the legislative original proposal, they had one body. It's called a unicameral. And it was the House of Representatives representation based on population. So what happened was the smaller states said, whoa, wait a minute. New Hampshire and Delaware said, Virginia is much bigger than we are, and if you're going to do this, we'll never have our voice heard. We'll never get our way on anything. The larger states will always steamroll us and roll over us and get their way. And we think that's unfair. So what was the grand compromise? The Senate, the creation of the upper house, the bicameral legislature. So now you had representation by population, the lower house, the people's house, and then the upper house, which was created to represent who?
States.
The states, the sovereign individual states. And they were supposed to represent the states equally, 2 per state. That way, everything would be balanced out, there would be a check and balance, and everybody would be happy. When they did that, 9 states ratified the Constitution, and that's what we have today. Now, I'm going to make a statement. How many of you believe, as I do, and it's okay if you disagree, but I kind of think I'm right, that the Constitution was written by divinely inspired men who has shown us that this Constitution has endured the test of time and given us more freedom, more liberty, and more protected God-given rights than any other political document in the history of mankind. Thank you. Now, every 4 years, somebody comes to me and says, Brad, you're right, but you know, when they got to that Electoral College thing, that's where they screwed up. They couldn't see 200 years into the future. Things have changed. That's antiquated. We need to get rid of the Electoral College and directly elect the president. Okay, so let's talk about this for just a minute. The president is the president of what? Finish the sentence. The president of? States. Not the president of the people, the president of the United States. The president is the CEO of the conglomeration of states, originally 13, now 50, and 57 according to some people. But we won't go there. So now the president is supposed to administer the federal government in the interest of the individual sovereign states. And they are supposed to represent the interests of and serve at the behest of the states, not sue them. Okay? So the president is supposed to do the things that the states cannot do for themselves, like national defense, negotiate treaties, war and peace, etc., and trade negotiations, etc. And other than that, not much. And what he is supposed to do is clearly outlined in the Constitution. So now the Electoral College is an outgrowth of this grand compromise that gave us the Constitution, the upper and the lower house. The Electoral College was based on how many representatives and how many senators. Add that together, that gives you the Electoral College. You got to have, well, the numbers have changed over the years, but now 270 to win. So ask yourselves, why is the Electoral College important? Because the smaller states will have representation in the selection of the president just as much as the larger states. If you go to the direct election of the president by popular vote, then it's the end of the republic. You might as well erase all the lines between the states. Why should you have California, Arizona, Nevada, New Mexico, Colorado, etc.? Just erase all those lines, because now you have the president of the democracy of the United, of America. The president of the democracy of America. No, it's not a republic anymore, because we're directly electing the president of the democracy of America. Direct election of the president is democracy. What was the one thing the founding fathers feared more than anything else?
Democracy.
Democracy, because it's mob rule. Democracy is two wolves and a sheep voting on what's for dinner. Okay? So this is why we have the Electoral College, because do we elect the President of the United States? Do we, the people, elect the President? No. We do indirectly, because we have a plebiscite in each state to give our voice to recommend to the state which person should be elected President. And then the slate of electors, if you remember on your ballot, it says, you know, let's say George Bush and John Kerry. There's a slate of electors pledged to George Bush and a slate pledged to John Kerry. In 2000 it was Bush Gore, and there was one slate elector from Arizona, if you remember, was heavily pressured to change his vote in the Electoral College from Bush to Gore. And if you remember that, he almost did, and it would have thrown the country into chaos. At the last minute, he didn't and voted for George W. Bush, and that was how the Electoral College was decided in the year 2000. Yes, sir?
But constitutionally, legally, these electors are representatives, and they can vote for whoever they wish.
That's right, but they say they are pledged to a particular
We've gotten
candidate.
away from that whole thing.
Yeah,
We go right past them to the presidential candidate,
yeah,
and that's
exactly.
not constitutional.
Exactly, and I'm a constitutional conservative. All right, so let's carry on here. So we don't elect the president based on a direct popular vote, because it would be the end of the republic. And so in the, so let me ask you a question. Next question. How many times in the history of this country has the winner of the popular vote failed to carry the Electoral College? Four. What was the last time the winner of the popular vote failed to carry the Electoral College? Bush Gore 2000. Okay. After that, there was a hue and cry that the Electoral College was now no longer relevant and we had to eliminate it. And Hillary came out right away in 2000 and said it should end the Electoral College. Gore just jumped on the bandwagon the other day. And there's somebody else I'll mention in just a minute that will shock you that's in favor of this. So they created something called the National Popular Vote Compact. Does anybody know about state compacts? It's constitutional. Two states can agree to enter into a compact on a particular thing, like crime or something, or health care. They're using it for health care, the health care compact between the states, as a way to get out of Obamacare. So they created the National Popular Vote Compact. Two states can enter into a compact. Once it's approved by Congress, then any other state can come knocking. Hey, Nevada and Iowa, I see what you two are doing over there. We'd like to get in on it. So the state legislatures vote on it, the governor signs it, and then whatever state is included in that compact. So the National Popular Vote Compact works this way. Let's take a state like Tennessee, which is 11 Electoral College votes. Now, Tennessee is a pretty doggone reliably red state. Even Al Gore couldn't carry his home state in the year 2000. Tennessee voted Republican. All right, so they have 11 Electoral College votes, just like Arizona. So let's take, for example, if Tennessee belonged to the National Popular Vote Compact, what would happen is Tennessee's voters would go to the polls on Election Day, and they would say, you know what, we want the Republican candidate. So they vote Republican, and at 7 o'clock, when the polls close, the talking heads, the commentators, and the pundits all come on, NBC, CBS, MSNBC, and C-SPAN. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the polls have just closed in Tennessee, and according to our exit polling, we project that Tennessee will go red. So let's put Tennessee in the red column with 11 votes. All right. Now, at the end of the night, when all of the popular vote is counted from coast to coast and border to border, Alaska and Hawaii, and they add all those popular votes together into one big pool, lo and behold, the Democrat candidate has gotten 50% plus one of the vote, thus making him the popular vote winner. And what happens now is that Tennessee, regardless of their state voting outcome, if a candidate receives the majority of votes in total across the country, then their Electoral College votes flip to the winner of the national popular vote. So the people who went to the polls in Tennessee and voted, their voices were negated. Okay? And that's how the National Popular Vote Compact works. Now, state compacts are constitutional. However, this materially changes how we elect a president. And in the Constitution, there are two proscribed ways to change the Constitution. One is by?
State convention.
Well, convention is one, and the other is?
Through Congress.
It's an A word. Amendment. Okay. So we've had amendments, but we've never had a constitutional convention, have we? And the Founding Fathers were scared to death of that, too. All right, so this materially changes the Constitution without using the prescribed methods for changing the Constitution allowed for in the Constitution. So I believe if this goes through, there will be a constitutional challenge, but then we have to trust the courts to come up with the right decision. How many of you are willing to trust the courts? All right. 9 states have currently passed this into law: Vermont, Maryland, Washington, Illinois, New Jersey, D.C., Massachusetts, Hawaii, and Jerry Brown just signed it in California earlier this year. That's 55 Electoral College votes. That's 9 states, and they control 132 Electoral College votes. Now, it needs 270 votes to take effect, because that's what the winning number is. However, 10 states have passed this measure in at least one chamber, and 2 in both houses awaiting the governor's signature. If they can get this through somehow before November, we will elect Barack Obama by national popular vote. And let me ask you a question. How many of you remember the Norm Coleman, Al Franken election in Minnesota, where they just kept finding votes? Oh my goodness, they were hiding in the hallway, and look, the trunk of that guy's car's got some votes over there. We just failed to count them. And Christine Gregoire has won governorship of Washington twice, based on found ballots after the canvass, or after the polls closed. Oh, look, there's more ballots, so they just keep counting. Now, if you believe there's a possibility of vote fraud, and all it's going to take to win is to get over 50%, gee, do you think they might just keep finding ballots in Chicago, or New York, or California until they push Barack Obama over 50%? This threatens our republic, ladies and gentlemen. Now, the other thing that threatens this state and many other states across the United States is something called open primaries. Oh, gee, it's not what you think, where you register as an independent, walk in and say, well, in the primary, I'd like to vote in the Democrat primary, or I'd like to have a Republican ballot. That's an open primary, where independents are allowed to choose what ballot they cast. This is called the top 2 primary, and it's an attempt by the left to get liberal candidates elected in the primary. Why? Because it's easier to manipulate the vote in a low voter turnout primary than it is to manipulate the vote in a high voter turnout general election. The Democrats are very disciplined because it's a top-down party. Who was it said earlier that they don't even have legislative district meetings because nobody shows up? They just wait for the marching orders. The Republicans at least have meetings and want to listen to what you have to say. It's top-down or bottom-up. All right, so what happens is all candidates, regardless of party, are put on one ballot, and then the top 2 vote getters go on to the general election. So let's take an example. The Democrats come to you and they say, you are not running in this election. I'm sorry, sit down. But you are, and you are the only two that are going to run. Now, we contentious, independent-minded conservative Republicans say, well, I don't care if you're running, I'm running too. And then suddenly there are 4, 5, or 6 Republican candidates. Add the Libertarian candidate, the Socialist candidate, the Green Party candidate, and the other Independent Party candidate, and suddenly you split all the votes down the ticket, and the only two to come out are the 2 Democrats running on the top, and that's when they go to the general election, and they're the only 2 that appear on the ballot. How many of you would like to, as a general rule of thumb, throw the bums out? How many of you would like to throw the bums out? Okay? If I were in a room full of liberal Democrats and I asked you that same question, I guarantee, no ma'am, the same number of hands would go up. The Democrats want to throw the bums out every bit as much as we do. This is an Incumbent Protection Act. The top 2 primary system guarantees that only incumbents will ever be re-elected because of the name recognition. Most people don't pay attention to elections till 5 minutes before they walk into the voting precinct place. And some of them, we have anecdotal stories of people walking in, signing the register, then leaning over to the poll worker saying, I forgot who am I supposed to vote for? And this actually happens. This actually happens. Now in Louisiana, they had this system for 30 years. 30 years. And in 30 years, Louisiana only ever voted out 1 incumbent in 30 years. The top 2 primary system in Louisiana delivered David Duke, the KKK guy, to run against Edwin Edwards, the convicted felon, for governor of Louisiana. These are the kind of results you get with this primary. Now, California just voted in the top 2 primary system. June the 5th of this year was their first experience with the top 2 primary system. 2 years ago, they put the state legislature, controlled by who in California? Democrats. They put this on the ballot, and the people of California went, oh, I guess so, so they voted for it. So now, in 2012, they had their first experience with the top 2 primary. So this upended everything in California. So they went to the polls and they voted. Now, here are the results. How many Electoral College votes does California have again? 55, less 2 for the senators. How many districts? 53, okay, 53 congressional districts. 20 congressional districts in California in November will have 2 Democrats at the top of the congressional district ticket and nobody else running. In 20 districts in California. In 8 districts in California, there will be 2 Republicans running and no one else on the ballot. So if you're inclined to go to the general election ballot and say, you know what, I don't like the Democrats and I don't like the Republicans. I'm going to cast a protest vote for that Libertarian guy. You ain't ever going to be able to do it again. Because third parties vanish under this system. They will never, ever make the general election ballot. The Libertarians in Arizona sued for the right to free association and won, and that's why you cannot vote in the Libertarian primary unless you are registered as a Libertarian. Okay? So, this is the Incumbent Protection Act. This is the elimination of third parties. And also, there are many times where you'll have 2 Democrats at the top of the ticket in a typically Republican district. And vice versa, you'll have 2 Republicans running in a Democrat district. Now, the top 2 promoters of this idea, they tell you, well, look, it'll get rid of the extremes on either end, and it will help increase voter turnout. Let me ask you a question. If you've got 2 Democrats running in a Republican district, just off the top of your head, you know, just your intuitive guess, does that increase or decrease voter turnout? Oh, duh. Okay, thank you very much. So this is the danger of the top 2 primary system. And that is why there are 2 organizations. One is called No Top 2. NoTop2.com, NoTop2.com, that's Arizona. Then the national organization grew out of the California Top 2 push, which is called StopTop2.org, StopTop2.org. Now, let me explain something to you. This is really a non-partisan, bipartisan issue, this top 2 primary thing. You can go to your liberal Democrat friends and talk to them about this without fear. The Republican Party has come out against the top two. But the Democrats had a meeting, and they had many people that were for it, and they had many that were against it. So the Arizona Democrat Party has taken an officially neutral position on top two. Neutral. They are neither for nor against. But I will tell you, if you go to stoptop2.org and you look down the right-hand side of the web page, it is unbelievable the right, left, and center groups that you will see aligned against top two. So this is really a bipartisan issue. Mary Rose Wilcox opposes top two. Wow. But it is being led, it is being led, the effort to get this passed is being led by former boy mayor of Phoenix, Paul Johnson. Okay? And allied with him on the committee is former Supreme Court Justice Sandra Day O'Connor. Oh, and the National Popular Vote Compact, I told you that Hillary and Al Gore are against the Electoral College, you know, they're for this National Popular Vote Compact. That has bipartisan support too. If you go to their website, the leading Republican that is advocating for this is, I'm glad you're sitting down because I about fell out of my chair, Senator Fred Thompson. His video endorsing the National Popular Vote Compact is still up at the website. All right, I got to get through this real quick because you guys have been really fabulous about letting me go on and on and on about this. Vote fraud could possibly elect the next president of the United States. Verify the Vote Arizona has been in existence for almost 2 years now. My co-chair is Jennifer Wright, who ran for mayor of Phoenix last year. Jennifer is an attorney formerly with the Institute for Justice, the Goldwater Institute, currently in private practice. She is also an elections law attorney, and she is a brilliant, brilliant young woman, and I'm pleased to be able to work with her. We have a website called verifythevoteaz.org. You have some handout sheets there. I was going to show you a video tonight, but we just simply have not got enough time. This is a 20-minute video that talks about recruiting poll watchers. We are trying to recruit 5,000 poll watchers in Arizona for Election Day, November 6th. We will provide the training for you to be trained poll watchers. Now, this is not poll workers. Poll watchers are observers, okay? Now, if you're going to be a poll worker on Election Day, we invite you to take our training, because they're going to teach you process, how to set up the polls and where that sign goes, and how to count, you put the ballot through the machine and how to set up the machines. And they're going to teach you process. We are going to teach you law, what's legal and what's not. And if there are any Democrats out there that want to take our training, we're open to that too. Libertarians, Greens, we are bipartisan, nonpartisan in that sense. Because the more eyes and ears we have in the polling place, the less chance that fraud will be committed in the polling place on Election Day. And let me tell you something else, and I speak to groups all over the state. I speak to Republican groups, LDs, Republican women's groups, 9/12 groups, Tea Parties, you name it. I speak all across the state. And the one thing I say, and you can take this to the bank, is that we have two ways of changing this country. One is by bullets, and the other is by ballots, and I have an allergy to lead. So I want that ballot box held sacrosanct. The miracle of this government, the miracle of this country, is that it is from the bottom up. It is from the people to the leaders, not from the leaders to the people. And that ballot box is our voice that gives the consent of the governed and tells the government how we consent to be governed, how much, when, where, and why. Okay? So if I catch a Republican committing vote fraud, I will come up and down on them harder than I would if it were a Democrat. Because this is my party of choice, the Republican Party. It is my hope to restore the Constitution. It is my hope that the Republican Party will lead the way to restoring the country that I grew up in and I love. And if I catch a Republican besmirching the ballot box with vote fraud, I don't want their stench on my party. I want them excommunicated. So everybody be warned. We are going to go after vote fraud regardless of party. We will train you regardless of party. If you go to our website, that video that I just held up is on the front page of our video, or on the front page of our website. We'd like you to please share that with family and friends. Now, if you belong to another organization like Rotary, Lions, Kiwanis, or a Women's Republican group or something like that, please, I have a limited number of those DVDs over here on the table. You're welcome to take one and please show it. It's about 20 minutes, okay? It's not really that long, but it's really comprehensive. There's a one-page handout that goes with that video, and that's the other, can I hold that out? You can click on, print that out, and then run off. Verifythevoteaz.org. It's on your handout. It's on your handout. There's a link above the video. Click that. It opens a copy of what you have in your hand. Print it out. Run off enough copies to give out to your Rotary Club or whatever as you show that. The other page are 9 things that you can do right away to educate yourself about the issue of vote fraud. And what happens is, if you're a poll watcher, we will train you. Then you will get a certificate of completion. You take that to your county party chairman. Who knows who that is? Rob Haney, and Tom Husband is the executive, okay? And Rob and Tom have promised me in blood that if we train you, they will assign you to a polling station. Because I'm not going to go through this. I would spend the last 2 years of my life leading up to November 6th of this year to get rid of Barack Obama. I have not spent 2 years of my life to train thousands of people to be poll watchers and then have them sit at home on election day. So Rob and Tom have promised me in blood they will get you assigned to a polling place. And that's what we need to do, is have you there. Now the video will explain a lot more than I have time to go in here to tonight. The other video on the table, real quick, let me just tell you what it is. This is a documentary called Invisible Ballots. It was produced in the year 2004. It is about the vulnerability of electronic voting machines and how easily they can be hacked. Now, I have one to a couple over here. Please take that with you. Let me see if I can get ahead to, there's a lot of reasons that we have vote fraud today, and there's a lot of people who are denying it. Hang on, let me get through right to the end here. SOE Skytle, all right. Look, it doesn't matter what your issue is, whether it's immigration or abortion or deficit spending or debt or whatever. Everybody here is motivated by something. But if your vote is usurped, stolen, or defrauded, you don't have a voice at the table to decide which potholes get filled after the election. To me, vote fraud is the hierarchy. It's the most important thing, because you have to win an election open and honestly and fairly to have a voice at the table. That's the miracle of our government, but if we lose it to fraud, none of those rest of those issues matter. Stalin said it's enough that people know an election has been held. The people who cast the ballots decide nothing. The people who count the ballots decide everything. Let me get to the end here. We need to sign up and verify the vote at truethevote.org, which is out of Houston, Texas. These are the 9 things that are on your sheet. And here's the parting gift. Invisible Ballots 2004. It's 90 minutes long. One to a couple, please. Have a strong drink handy while you watch this, because it will curl your hair. All right? But the good news is that at Verify the Vote, under the Resources tab, we have information on end-to-end verifiable voting. In 2006, Arizona passed a statute that required a voter verifiable paper ballot for every voter if you're voting on an electronic machine. If you vote on a machine and you don't get a paper ballot, you need to report that. It's a violation of state law. All right? Now, Verify the Vote is run entirely on donations. I'm not paid for this, neither is Jennifer. We don't have any big donors. If the Koch brothers are sending us checks, they got lost in the mail somewhere. I don't know about them, okay? I'm in the entertainment industry, and in 2008, that went south and sour, and in the last 4 years, I've lost literally everything but the roof over my head. But I've devoted myself to making sure that we have a free and fair election in November, and that we can have an election we can have confidence in. So we run strictly on donations. The DVDs cost money, the labels, the business cards, the ink, the toner. 1 round of ink to print DVDs is $100, just for 1 round of ink. And then I need gas to get home. Okay. At $4 a gallon, you laugh, but I'm on fumes right now. So anyway, that's what it is. Your donations are welcome. If you want to make out a check to Brad Zinn, that's fine too. We're applying for our 501c3, which we don't quite have yet, but we're applying for it. And as I always say at the end of every presentation, I appreciate your patience. I'm sorry we ran a little bit long. God bless you, and God save our republic.